Well, Cynthia, this looks like a pretty good group. Welcome everybody to the Leaders Who Care series. How y'all doing?
Doing great, thanks.
Very good, thank you.
All right. Well, for anybody who doesn't know, we started the Leaders Who Care series at Fifth Element Group for a really important reason. We wanted to recognize and highlight leaders who really did care and didn't look at that as a fluffy thing. They really did care that you can do way better economically in your businesses and organizations when you're doing good, and highlighting individuals like yourself around the world that are sharing their stories and experiences and insights on how that happens. And what I'm excited about this this sub-series, we're going to do 3 series with my wonderful co-host, which I'll introduce in a second, all about the why, where, and what of work and everything that's going on about work and from hybrid to nomadic to all sorts of things, and how it impacts the individuals, how it impacts families and community and business, and how that looks now. It's changed even so much from pre-COVID as to what's going on. And I think we've got a great crew of complementary experiences and businesses that's here right now. So Cynthia, I'm really wondering what was the passion of all these guests to do what they do. So with that, let me pass it to, I'm so grateful that Cynthia agreed to co-host this series with me. And I'm going to hope that she does most of the talking and I just do most of the learning and listening on this. So Cynthia, great to have you here, and take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. So at the Adecco Group and at the Innovation Foundation, we've been looking at and thinking very deeply about how the future of work is changing, the things that we learned from COVID, the things that have become sticky, the things that haven't. And there's this veneer of this narrative about it's just about hybrid, it's just about bricks and mortar. Companies are trying to force people to come back to work. And what we're interested in even more is what are the fundamental changes that we've seen in the interplay between where we work and how we work, what the expectations are, particularly of people, what that balance of the way you want to live and the way you want to work is. And so we thought, what better way to explore this than to bring people together who are living alternative ways of marrying where you work and how you work, and bringing together folks in just an open conversation to see what bubbles up, see what we can share, what we can learn from each other, and then how we can share this out with a broader audience. So maybe we could start with some quick introductions. We'd love to know a bit more about who you are, not a whole CV, but just a little bit about who you are and what's brought you here today. So maybe Paul, I'd like to go first.
Sure. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Shalla, founder and CEO of Delos, and also founder of our International Well Building Institute. We operate the world's largest certification, rating, and accreditation body for healthy and safe buildings, healthy and safe indoor spaces. Our well building standard is in 130 countries at this point, and the WELL certification and rating platform is being used by over 25% of the Fortune 500 and growing by the day. This is a merging of the health sciences with the building sciences, really formulating a blueprint to understand all of the inputs that surround people indoors, in this case in an office environment, that have an impact on our health, well-being, productivity, prospects for longevity, what have you. 10-year effort, over $100 million of research capital put forth, great institutions involved like Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, and hundreds of doctors from different disciplines from around the world, in collaboration with real estate professionals, owners, operators, developers, architects, engineers, designers, what have you. So it's effectively connecting the built environment with the human condition, and has become a benchmark, candidly, for materiality in ESG reporting, primarily in the S bucket, human and social capital management, and particularly how spatial considerations impact our occupants.
And Paul, who are you?
And who am I? I'm the founder and CEO of Delos. And
no, that's not you. That's what you do. Who are you? Where are you from? Family? Who are you, really quick?
Yeah.
And where are you now?
I'm on the West Coast now. Our headquarters are in New York City. Born and raised in New Jersey. Spent my college years at NYU. 18 years on Wall Street prior to all this. The last 10 at Goldman Sachs. Was a partner of the firm at Goldman before leaving to launch this enterprise.
Fabulous. Joya, who are you and where are you right now?
Thank you. So I'll start with the me. So I'm Joya Deuker. I am the CEO of the InHub. I'll tell you more about the InHub later. I was born actually in Switzerland. No, actually, that's true. That's wrong. I was born in the United States, but grew up in Switzerland and was drawn back to the US for part of my studies and then for work. And for the last 20 plus years, I've been working in international innovation collaboration, scientific collaboration on behalf of the Swiss government in a network called Swissnex. I did that in various functions. I built up our office in Brazil, and I was mostly located in San Francisco for a total of 10 years, running and managing our innovation outposts in space there at Pier 17. And just about a year ago, I decided, and I shouldn't say my family and I decided to make the leap back to the old continent for the project that I'm currently building from scratch, which is called the InHub. And I have 2 children. I have a husband who's from Mexico. We have lived various countries and speak various languages at the table. And I guess I've experienced a lot of what new work means, both in my previous context, and I'm very much pushing it now with the project that we're pursuing at the InHub.
Muy bien, gracias.
Perfecto.
And Gib, who are you and where are you with that fabulous background?
Who am I? Where am I? And what do I do? I better start off for Mark's sake with the who. So I'm Scottish, born on a Scottish island, so I will keep my speech as clear as possible. Maybe subtitles can be added afterwards, but for those that don't understand. I got off this island and went into the corporate world and worked for many years in big companies. Very much trying to be in this ESG, in the early stages, I suppose, of ESG and purpose, and got labeled an entrepreneur. I was trying to grow a social enterprise within one of the big consulting firms, but that took its toll, and I had a burnout. And following that, I've been very interested in this whole, how we work, why we're working, where we work. Today, I'm in the French Alps, there's lovely, beautiful mountains behind me, and it's linked to what I do now, which is balancing the being with the doing. I'm the founder of the Craig Bieruch, there's a good Scottish word, Craig Bieruch Business Decelerator. So don't adjust your subtitles. I do mean decelerator. We're very much, good at accelerating faster, bigger, better, all of these stuff that business has done over these years. But really what we're trying to do is say maybe the fastest way to drive change in ourselves and in our organizations is to start by slowing down. And we can explore that a little bit, but I'm in the middle of a co-being week with some colleagues, which is balancing, again, the day job with a sort of a la carte menu of activities that are going to inspire and engage people. So that's it in essence, but I'm sure we'll go into that in a bit more detail.
Quick question. Where does Gib come from? Don't make it a long answer, just a quick one.
Short for Gilbert, or Gilbert as it is in France. The first head of the Clan Buchanan, but that's a whole other story. We've spoken Scottish links in the past, Mark.
Well,
Excellent. Well, just to kind of riff off that, I'm really curious about how the expectations of what individuals want in where they work and how they work has changed. So I'd love to hear, Joya, on your thoughts about what Gib and Mark have said, Gib and Paul have said, specifically around the changes that they've seen in the workplace and what InHub is doing to address some of those things.
Right. Well, I think
this is not a panel. This is a conversation.
This is a conversation. Fantastic. And everybody chime in. I think if you look at sort of the history of work, we've gone through various periods and phases, and also related leadership paradigms and philosophies that have changed. And I think they have particularly changed in the last, say, 10 to 20 years. And with moving from very much autocratic, transactional leadership style to a much more collaborative and empowering leadership style. And I think that is very much a function of the technological world we move in, just simply the fact that we have become more decentralized and that we have become more connected and have become more, I mean, if you just take the creative industries, right? The creative industries were highly segmented and let's say dominated by a few players, and then everybody else kind of missed out. And if you look at what YouTube has done, it has democratized access to artistic production and getting known. And I think that is just one symbol of what you see in many other areas of life and work and production. And I think the claim and the demand of the workers has become to have a voice, to be heard, to be seen and acknowledged as a holistic human being that has a lot more to bring to the table than the simple role that they play. And I think that is a change that is both generational. I think in the generation of Generation Z, it's probably even more pronounced. I always see myself as a bit of a mediator between the previous and the new generation. Somewhere stuck in the middle. I still know the old one, but I also am working very actively with the newer ones and understanding and bridging in a way both worlds as that in-between sort of person. And I think what we have seen now with COVID and sort of the digital transition that has been accelerated through the pandemic, remote work, etc., we suddenly see people really claiming and taking stake of their own lives and asking themselves, hey, what's actually that being and doing that Gabe mentioned that I want to shape and create for my own life? So there's much more empowerment. And what we do with the InHub is we actually on the one hand, we really bring a new form of economic development to a mountain region. A mountain region that so far has been known purely for leisure tourism, skiing, sports, etc. And we say, and in the day and age where you see climate change changing those conditions, and these regions cannot simply survive anymore by counting on those few weeks of perfect snow. We say, there are other ways to make this region, because the region is always beautiful. The nature is always there. It's always highly inspiring. It's always incredibly gorgeous. And you can get so much by simply being immersed in that culture and in that unique nature. So we make that accessible and allow people to have both an ecosystem of interesting people and an ecosystem of content and other people who work on interesting things and companies, as well as infrastructure that allows them to work from a place like that, making it possible for them to move there if they want to, combine their hobby of mountain biking, skiing, whatever, you name it, with an interesting place to work, which is now possible because of all the digital technologies, but also creating a hub that people go to specifically because they realize, oh, wait, there is a unique set of people that gain, and like me, get a lot of inspiration and new ideas and different ways of thinking from nature. And we always say, when have good ideas ever happened in the office? Let's be honest.
Hey, Paul.
Maybe under the shower, maybe in your morning run, but definitely not in the office.
Hey,
so
Paul,
we're trying to make that more accessible.
Especially 72 hours into the working week. It's crazy to think that that's when innovation, creativity is going to happen, because it ain't. And we should be frank about that.
Paul, thoughts on that?
Well, ideally, yeah, we would love to be outside all the time. If you look at the better part of human history, our biological evolution, 99.9% of it was spent entirely outdoors. We used to wake up with the sunrise. We'd be active and energized and productive and on the move during the day under a very bright sky, as that light would hit our circadian optic nerve and boost hormones for energy, productivity, mental acuity. We would digest our food in a different type of setting sun. We would sleep in complete darkness and cooler temperatures. We breathed pure air. We drank pristine water. And that represented the bulk of human history. Clearly, the ideal setting for the biological condition is that 24-hour circadian setting in relationship to our sun and our natural setting. Unfortunately, obviously, from a practical standpoint, as we start building boxes around ourselves called 4 walls and a roof, spending most of our time indoors, all of that got disrupted. Artificial light has disrupted our sleep-wake cycles. Indoor air quality is 2 to 5 times worse than outdoor air quality anywhere you go in the world. And so, there is a practical need to look at the indoor environment and better understand how we can either recreate or adjust to standards and protocols that can help us in a better setting, a more natural setting. Indoor air quality is key to concentration, focus, obviously respiratory outcomes. The pandemic taught us a lot about some simple things, that what surrounds us matters. What we breathe matters, what we touch matters, how we gather indoors matters, what have you. The well building movement that we kickstarted 10 years ago is something that's looking to do exactly that. Understand the true biological kind of needs and the impacts of a lot of time spent indoors, and looking to help the indoor environment be more conducive to a natural setting, to a better setting, not only for creativity and collaboration and productivity, but obviously chronic health outcomes. If you look at our chronic health outcomes, 5% of those are genetic. Can't really do much about that, at least not yet. Another 20 to 25% are determined by our access to care and our lifestyle. But the rest, up to 70% of chronic health outcomes, are determined by our surrounding environmental and social conditions, basically where we place ourselves, which in today's day and age is primarily indoors. 92% of our lives spent inside. I certainly agree with our guests that getting outside and working outside and spending outside, as much time outside is clearly beneficial. Again, from a practical sense, we also need to re-engineer the indoor environment so it's not disrupting us. So clearly there's a balance. I think in an ideal world, everyone would love to work next to a mountain with beautiful views and be able to get those creative juices flowing. And there's no doubt that is absolutely a preferred way for human beings to spend their time. But again, in a practical standpoint, in very dense urban settings and certain companies that are requiring employees to be at work all the time, another way to approach this is to enhance the indoor environment. And with 5 billion square feet of real estate now around the world, achieving WELL certifications and WELL ratings, we are glad to see that we're playing our part and hopefully looking to do so.
Gib, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, add to that, or maybe just maybe take a slightly different perspective, because I agree with everything that you've said, Paul and Joya. I think there's a mindset change that's necessary as well. The environment is part of it, where we are working. I'm not for a minute advocating that we spend all our time outdoors with waterproof laptops and things like that, certainly where I come from in Scotland. But the idea of having this balance and finding ways that even in an inner city, we don't all have mountains all around about us, we don't all have beautiful Scottish islands, but there's parks in most urban areas. And the mindset still that prevails in the corporate world is the more hours at the desk, the more key hits that you do in a day, the more output. And that may well be true of, I don't know, email perhaps. There's far too much of that. But when it comes to thinking, creating, producing something worthwhile, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, or whatever it's become on the trot at the desk isn't going to be productive. And this, if we can challenge it and actually say that a couple of hours out, as I was doing earlier on, walking in a beautiful place or the park down the road or whatever it may happen to be, and then going back and maybe you get more done in 6 really good hours than 12 bad hours. And some of that can be outdoors, some of it can be indoors, some of it can be standing. We weren't designed to be sitting down the whole time. In fact, I heard a podcast recently talking about the fact that, in fact, it takes more of our thinking bandwidth as human beings to sit down and be still than it does to walk. That's why you get great ideas when you're walking along the road or walking up a hill or whatever. So let's rethink some of these paradigms around the way we're working.
Isn't sitting the new aging? It's been said.
Sitting is one of the worst things you could do for yourself. It's bad for digestion. It's bad for posture. It's bad for circulation. It's not a natural state. Correct.
I'm going to kind of show my age here. I remember when I was at Deloitte, we used to have to scotch tape 14-column working papers across our whole boardroom, and scotch tape them for consolidated journal entries. And we were reading prospectuses till like midnight, until somebody said, maybe we should go outside and change our mindset, because we're like totally off base here. And that was back in 1980 or something. So took a long time to get it almost right, it seems.
Completely.
Cynthia?
Paul, what are your thoughts about how much of that change can happen in the workplace and how much of the change maybe needs to happen outside the workplace?
Yeah, I think Gibbs absolutely right. I mean, it starts with culture. If it's perceived to be not okay to be away from the office, then you've got an inherent problem. And certainly, what we've seen, at least with our workforce, as we're still primarily a lot of it remote, a lot of it hybrid, and some office setting. I mean, we're definitely in a new normal here. You do lose creativity and collaborative elements if you're entirely remote. You want people to also be together and interacting, not just through a digital screen, but in person, randomly running into each other, sharing ideas, having that true external access, if you will, to people that are not just scheduled to be on your Zoom or what have you. So it's always going to be a balance. I certainly think that the culture has shifted. It is, in my mind, a lot more accepted now, obviously, for the events that we've gone through, to not be present at the office 8, 10, 12 hours a day, except in industries like banking or trading or something. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for those guys. So I think we're well on our way. Now it's trying to find a soft landing and the right landing zone, whereas we are taking advantage of all the benefits of both an in-work, in-presence, kind of existence with colleagues around us, but also plenty of time for us to de-stress, rethink. Ideas will come upon us that, again, to Kib's point, I think on a walk that may not, if you're just sitting there forcing mental capacity or a thought in a fixed setting. So to me, it's all about balance, and I think we're headed there.
Good.
Just a really quick point, and then I'd be interested in Joya's views on this, but I get this idea that human interaction and having colleagues around is kind of important, and you don't get that on the scheduled Zooms. Something we've been playing with, particularly on the sort of immersion events we do in Scotland with Craig Bierich, is bringing together people from different industries together, different swim lanes. We're in these very much vertical kind of work with only the people that look like us, speak like us, think like us. But if we can mix that up, and also people from the non-profit sector with the for-profit sector, we even have places for people from the local community. And during these events, the only rule we have is the first thing you don't introduce yourself by is what you do.
Yeah.
It's your first name. It's Paul, it's Joy, it's Mark, whatever. And you get to know people as who they are. You build trust. And then a few days in, you find out, oh my goodness, you're a banker. I don't normally like bankers, but you seem okay. Or, oh, crumbs, you're from the non-profit sector. But you had some great ideas about, how I was going to sort of address X, Y, Z. So when it comes to innovation, a bit of diversity of thought and putting people together in these collaborative environments, rather than we all must be in the same office building, the same office block, speaking to colleagues that look like us, etc. So it's just I'm trying to build on that idea, Paul.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I would chime in on that. I mean, we at the InHub, which is really a space that promotes collaboration, not just within teams, but also among teams. We talk about curated serendipity, right? Really thinking about user groups that are there at the same time. Plus, we have actually a sports center, so we'll have professional athletes training there. And we'll very carefully think about the spillover potential between different groups who are there at the same time. We'll have maybe athletes that are very, have undergone very, very impressive mental training. What do they have to teach to a business executive or a activist, political activist? By the way, the highest burnout rate is among political activists. who are so highly engaged and passionate about what they do, but have such a hard time setting boundaries, and really thinking about what are the learnings, the potential for cross-pollination between different groups. This is the thing that just doesn't happen enough in the real world. Whether we go to our office every day or whether we sit at our computers, and there for sure doesn't happen, because we have completely, unless we make a specific effort to join a networking event online, which most of us probably don't do, we have completely eliminated all the potential for serendipity to happen. We are only scheduled, we're only doing what needs to be done, we're ticking off our boxes every day, but all the potential for things to happen in an unplanned fashion is kind of eradicated, right? And we need to get back to building human spaces for human connection. As you said, Gib, I think that's a really beautiful way of just getting these people together and letting them meet each other as humans, and sort of take away all the potential for prejudice and categorizing that we all do, because that's how our brain is wired.
The building,
and really meeting humans.
Sorry, Joy, I didn't mean to cut across you there, but when you talk about building spaces, there's also literally and metaphorically as well. It's we just don't have space in our lives. You know, I use sometimes there's, you know, the idea of, you know, music. You've got this kind of, you know, rests in the sheet music, and the one beat rest. Cynthia, I know, is a very good pianist. The rest, the space, the nothing is as important as the doing. And, you know, in a business setting, if you were trying to play these beautiful music, you'd want to get from the beginning to the end as quickly as possible and maximize shareholder value in doing so. Whereas actually, it's the silences is important. And where do we have the spaces? Where do we have the 1 bar rests in our schedule in the day? And that's where the innovation, the creativity, and the serendipity comes in. I think that's what you're kind of saying, Joya.
I love that. I
we
really
need
love
that
that
also in our lives.
Yeah. I mean, our tagline, sorry, one last thing, our tagline that we came up with is space and time for transformation. These are the things that just, and now I have to apologize, I have a child crying in the background.
That's great. No, now you're
collateral
talking
damage of home office.
No, now you're talking about
no.
in real life with the child in there. Hey, I just
exactly. It's all right there.
I just want to inject
space and time for transformation. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just want to inject one word before I pass back to Cynthia. There's one word called trust that I think is touching on everything you're talking about. Trusting a person to take the space or go listen to music or go for a walk. Trusting the person that working remote that they're getting it done and not counting how many keys at home they're pressing on. Trusting that you can collaborate together with even competitors to do things better, type of thing. And trusting that, you know, people look at things from different perspectives, from their backgrounds, from their experiences, and listening, taking that moment that you talk about in music, listening to them to get things done. Talking to a lot of leaders, and I know you all have too, is one of the biggest things I hear from CEOs that are enjoying being CEOs now is that they're able to show emotion and vulnerability. They don't know everything, and they've had to learn to trust even more because people aren't in the office with them all the time. And yet on the other hand, they also trust that younger people should be in the office sometimes to learn what that's all about too.
Exactly. I think this is so interesting what you were saying about CEOs, because that brings us back to this issue of leadership as well. And what we see over and over is there's the narrative of, yes, it's good. We want it to be human-centric. We want to bring people back into beyond hybrid. And then when push comes to shove, people revert. So I'd be really curious as to why these more alternative models or more groundbreaking ways of leading teams and allowing teams to have that trust are not becoming more mainstream. So I don't know, Paul, your thoughts on why is this still a minority of leaders who are making these choices and really living in this different way?
Well, I think partly it was some of this was forced on folks because of what we saw as the abrupt halting of in-office work, and clearly that's not a natural way to get people to buy in to the value of remote, to the value of an individual schedule and flexibility, what have you. So I do think that the natural reaction to any rigid mind in the leadership sense is, well, I don't know what my employees are doing 8 hours a day. Again, because that was forced on 100% of the workforce and 100% of the leadership in one abrupt moment, you're not going to get people to embrace the benefits of this in that type of forced event. In my mind, it takes a long time for people to come around and say, okay, I can see the benefits of this. I do think some of the most hardline leaders out there have realized that you really don't need to see any sacrifice of execution and productivity in a remote environment. In fact, a lot of times wasted at the office. There's a lot of posturing going on. There's a lot of politicking going on. There's a lot of conversations at the water cooler. There's 2-hour commutes. There's a half-hour shower. There is a ton of benefit to remote. It eliminates a lot of wasted time, wasted expenditure, wasted effort, and wasted nonsense, to be honest. And so I think you are seeing people realize that. I certainly think, though, you'll always have this issue of accountability, particularly in a tougher economic environment and a tougher jobs market, whereby when companies are forced to start making cuts, it's going to be very, very easy for them to perhaps make the wrong decisions because they have this unknown of, well, what does that person really do 8 hours a day? Or at least, how do I know what that person has done 8 hours a day for the last 3 weeks when they could be gaming the system? And unfortunately, that's the other side of this reality. I've always believed, and this goes back, the better part of my professional working life, that overall productivity in the office is so much lower than people think. I mean, when you actually get down to it and you look at a roster and you look at a workforce, you can probably count, in my mind, and this has always been kind of a personal opinion, but true work, true output, might come down to 2.5 hours a day, as opposed to what they call the 8-hour working day. Well, if that's the case, why can't we harness that and allow for more time, to Gib's point and Goya's point? I'm sorry, is it Goya?
Joya, no worries.
So
Joya.
sorry. Joya's to allow for these externalities to influence our minds and our productivity and our creativity and all of that. So this will find its balance. But to your question, Cynthia, I think the fact that it was forced on people was unfortunately a rough start with regards to the overall acceptance of this. But the fact that it was forced on people, I think we saw so many positives come out of this. And, look at a traditional commuter schedule with an 8-hour working day, and you can just carve out probably half of that time is wasted or lost or unnecessary. So it'll find its balance.
Can I offer a hypothesis on that too? I mean, if we look at who's on this call now, we are all, again, this in-between generation. And we knew the old model, and frankly, we grew up in the old model. And I lived in San Francisco for 10 years. I dealt with a lot of people very much at the forefront of, trying and experimenting with new ways of working and having trust, etc. All those things, very much taking that for granted. And now I moved to Switzerland, and it's a very traditional place. You know that, Cynthia. And people still think and tick in a very traditional way. And what I've heard people say is like, well, I also had to be at the office every day. They're not used to a system of trust. They feel like that is all they know. So how could it be any other way? And I think you're absolutely right, Paul. It has been forced on a lot of people, but mind you, it has been forced in a very different way in a country like Switzerland, because the shutdown literally was 1 month and that was it. And most people went back to the office and things just went on as normal, and in other places, it was very much something that took time and let people grow into it. And I think that is much less true if you look at these more traditional economies like where I am. And I truly think it has a lot to do with why do they get to when I did not. And I think there's a little bit of that generational jealousy or maybe distrust simply because of the non-familiarity of the model. And I think that cannot be underestimated.
Definitely. But I would just wanted to pick up on the point Paul made about the some of the benefits as well. I mean, look at, yes, it was forced upon people. Nobody saw it coming. But when people were at home and not under the watchful gaze of the boss, and maybe having a chance to, dare I say, go out for a walk or go for a cycle or whatever. Some of the creativity that spurred, you know, when you weren't hammering away. We saw, I mean, in the UK, I think in July 2020, there were twice as many startups as in the previous year, 2019. We saw in the corporate world ideas and innovations around whether, you know, perfume manufacturers make hand sanitizer, or, you know, car manufacturers making ventilators. All these ideas, these weren't in the boardroom dreamt up, or the R&D department. That was when innovation became people thinking about their role in the company, time to reflect. The foot was maybe a bit off the economic gas. They weren't getting on a plane every week. And these ideas and inspirations came. And so, you know, and now we're all seem to have gone back, and there's this tug of war between the old guard bosses saying, you know, I want you working every hour at the desk that I'm paying you, and the younger folks saying, you know, I don't want that anymore. And then it seems to be, well, make it 3 days, no, 2 days, 3 days. And people go into these ghost offices, sit and Zoom, you know, and wonder why they can't be in their bedroom, or dare I say, you know, out having a walker in one of Joya's centers. So it's we just need to fundamentally, I think, challenge that paradigm around work.
You know, I think all our parents had really good quotes, and one of them was everything in moderation, and call that balance or whatever. And mental health is such a huge issue. And I kind of think you get positive mental health, if that's the term, having both of them in the office and remote, or in the office and going to the inn, or you know, and things like that. That seems to almost be the most common sense, logical answer. We need to be around other people, and yet we also need to be by ourselves.
So
yeah, I think
sure.
that the true, sorry,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add, I think the true magic happens when people are together. Ideally in nature, maybe in a place that is unfamiliar, a little bit out of the comfort zone. And that's where the really, truly surprising conversations happen. That's where the truly surprising ideas come to mind. But I think that we're social beings. I mean, no question. And I think most of us do thrive. And I can talk about myself. I'm an extreme extrovert. I thrive in conversation. And that's when everything happens in my brain. And so for me, just being in front of my computer scheduled through with Zoom calls is just not where I thrive. So, and I think that's true for a lot of other people too. So I think having that place where you still physically get together, whether that is an office or it is a place where you as a team tend to go regularly and meet, I think that's absolutely crucial for productivity.
I think it's all about balance as well, Joy, and also having role models that can get that balance of office versus home. And when at home, the way that they are working out. Just on Sunday there, I was out with a friend who works for a large pharmaceutical company in Switzerland, and was out for a long bike ride. And he was saying, you know, I'm managing at the moment just about to still get out from time to time during the day for a bike ride while the weather's good, or to go for a walk. But I do work then later, but I make sure that nobody really knows. And I said, well, I'm challenging that. Actually, you know, let's not do this by stealth. Let's, with pride, put on the out of office saying, I'm sorry, I am out for a cycle, or I'm going to take my kids to school today and I can't, you know, and give each other permission to work in that different way when we are working from home, so that it's, you know, and when we're in the office, similarly, you know, we can't be at our desk the whole time. You can step away from your desk and judge the outputs in different ways.
Sorry, can I just say one quick thing? And I promise not to talk as much, but I don't know what happens. You mentioned pride, not to name drop, but I've had 2 conversations with Richard Branson, and both of them were about pride. And how can you be proud? And no one says they're proud of where they work anymore, hardly ever, because of different eras. But he said, so how can companies have their employees be proud of where they work? And it relates to some of the stuff we're talking about, putting in a meditation room like you do, Paul, as one simple example, or plants in the office, or, you know, giving them a chance to go for a bike ride or whatever it may be. That, you know, aside from mental health, there is pride in our company, our leaders who really do care about that.
I would build on that to say that's also, the pride comes from that combination of trust and agency. And so I think people talk a lot about trust. I will let you do this thing, but just because you let someone do it doesn't mean that the person feels the agency to go and do it. So it's back to what you were saying about, you know, the guy who goes out for the bike ride but pretends that he's not. So people have to have the trust, and then they have to exercise it. And so I think it's back, Paul, to what you said about giving people the choice to decide when am I in the office, when am I alone, when do I work here or there, and then if they can choose that and then base it on outcomes instead of presenteeism, that will go a long way to change. And that's something that we were hoping was going to be really sticky coming out of COVID, and I think it hasn't been as much as it could be. So what I would love is to actually challenge each of you in the last few minutes to give one piece of advice. How can leaders actually change this behavior and make it mainstream so that it's not a handful of people? We're sort of preaching to the converted here, but how do we make this mainstream? How do we convince the people who are maybe not convinced yet that this hybrid working, beyond hybrid working, trust and agency model is actually the way to get better work done? Would like to go first.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Who's going first? Gioia.
I'll go. Okay. I think it has a lot to do with what Gib just mentioned and the conclusion of that, right? Like doing it overtly and proudly, and actually truly having role models in leadership living it. And I think that's a really big challenge. I'm not too much in the corporate world. I cannot truly judge, but I would assume that a lot of people in the high leadership, top leadership of companies doesn't necessarily role model that kind of behavior. They sort of grudgingly accept it as an HR strategy. Okay, let them do their home office thing and let them, but again, they don't necessarily embrace it themselves. And if for me as a woman and a woman in a leadership position, and Cynthia, I bet you relate very much to that. For me, it's been such a blessing. The stress level in my life has come down tremendously after COVID, because all of a sudden I didn't have to do it all the time and be here and be there and in between also make it there, and all of that, right? Like, just crazy to be a mother and have a career. And I don't want to exclude men. I know a lot of men have the same challenge. But I think for me, and I've been told that by many staff, is the fact that they see me doing it and that they see me actually taking the time to go to the school theater on a Wednesday afternoon and being open about that is really, really important in giving them permission to stick to a work-life balance or to live that, right? Because it doesn't mean that my performance is going down. It doesn't mean that I'm not reaching the goals, but just living it, I think, is absolutely crucial, and showing that it can be possible and that you can still be achieving your goals while also respecting your boundaries and being there for your family, whatever it may take, and respecting your health, right, in the very, very first place.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it starts with getting these leaders to really take a practical look in the rearview mirror and understand that the old normal was far from perfect. It wasn't like we had this perfect thing and it got disrupted, and now we need to figure out how to accept this new normal. I'll give you a great example. I mean, for 2 years prior to the lockdown, with regards to the required need for in-person meetings, I took 356 flights in 2 years. By the way, all commercial, not one of those private. And 80% of those flights were international. So every other day I was on a plane in a different country having meetings, time zones messed up. And then literally that came to an abrupt stop. And it's so wonderful now not to have to spend the money, get on planes, fly 14 hours for a 1-hour meeting, because we have this incredible platform of virtual meetings. And that's accelerated, and I think has saved so much waste and saved so much money to what used to be very, very imperfect. The office environment and the indoor environment in general, a very imperfect environment. And hopefully, again, things are being done to change that. But it first starts with, hey, guys, what we had wasn't working. What we had was a facade. And I think as soon as people realize that and can make some of this, really just put pure math and economics to the understanding of how productive have people really been in the office, and how many hours a day are they losing by, Joya, to your point, having to get from here to there. I mean, just commuting time in and of itself, let alone rushing around. So if we can start with the foundation that what we had was wrong to begin with, I think people would be much more accepting of this new normal, and how it is, we think, perhaps much better.
One of your flights that was most important was when you flew in from Japan to LA to speak at the Leaders Who Care conference. That was a good flight.
Remember, I got there 10 minutes in time.
Nice plug. Nice plug, Mark. It's your podcast, I guess. But I agree. What we had wasn't working, and what we have is also not working. And I don't think there's a trite sort of quick tip that I could give. I think there needs to be a fundamental reimagination of the whole office environment. If you look at McKinsey's recent Gen Z report, we have Gen X leaders, or maybe, dare I say, the likes of my generation, Mark, whatever, that are managing these people and don't really quite understand what they want, why they're coming in. The need for purpose and the place and the pride that you talked about in the workplace is so important. So we need to take away these blinkers of what we had, reimagine the workplace, why we're coming into it, where it is it indoors, is it outdoors, are we, in these inner city things, do we need a quarter of the real estate or the size of it that we had before, and that the on-site meetings become, flipped with what used to be the off-site becomes the on-site in some ways. So I think it's a fundamental paradigm shift that we need, and something short of that is just going to be really sort of tinkering around the edges.
Cynthia, do you think we need to have our next meeting in the Alps?
We definitely
You'd be
do.
absolutely welcome.
You're all welcome.
On the Scottish island, actually, Mark, and I can promise you some whiskey. All things in moderation, as my dad would say, apart from whiskey.
The secret sauce is a shot of bourbon and a cigar every day. Is that what it is?
Yeah, guaranteed innovation. Absolutely. Guaranteed innovation.
Thank you. So, Mark, maybe just take us home and let us know how all of this is going to fit into that flow of Leaders Who Care, and how you take this out to a broader audience.
Well, first of all, thanks to Joya and Gib and Paul for being Leaders Who Care and being influencers out there in taking us that next step. And from here, you're going to have to watch out for the paparazzi probably after this is put out in social media, because they're going to be all over you guys, I would think. But no, we're going to be sharing, this on social media. We'll share it with you first, so you can take a look at it as well. And then hopefully even, do some kind of follow-up at some point. And certainly you all are encouraged to connect as well, and, see what good things we can all do together. So, yeah, we just thank you for participating, and hopefully there's a lot more to come. And thank you to, the unbelievable co-host, Cynthia, for, all that you bring, including a great smile to the table. Merci beaucoup, gracias, thank you very much, toda raba, whatever, and you probably got some other languages to go along with that, Joya, but
Obrigado.
thanks a million.